Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today I'm going to be making a list of sorts, and this list pertains to if I could only have 10 games, what those 10 games would be. So I'm going to break down my collection and decide which 10 games out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games that I have now, which 10 games would I keep? And in order to make this list, I made some rules for it. I'm I'm saying that I can only have the base game for these games. So no expansions, only base games for these. And so because of that, I want to get a bunch of games that have a bunch of replay value, that have a bunch of variability from game to game. I also want the games themselves to offer a wide range of depth and different types of genres, different types of player counts. I want a lot of these games to be solo player games as well, as along with multiplayer games, because I do like playing solo games, and if I have 10 games, I want to have a bunch of multiplayer games that are good at solo games too. So that was important for me. So yeah, I broke down and made a list of 10 games. This was probably the hardest list I've ever had to make. I want this to be, break it down to 50 games would be more comfortable for me. Even 20 games would be better, but 10 games, I had to throw away a lot of games that I would want to keep in my collection, but I condensed it down to these 10 games, try to get a lot of variety in here so that I have different types of games in here. With that being said, let us just jump into these. And these aren't numbered from like my favorite to my least favorite or anything like that. These are just 10 games. And I might say numbers in here, but that doesn't mean anything. It's just so that I keep track of where I am on this list. So let's start with the first game. The first game is by far the smallest game and probably the simplest game on this list. This is a trick-taking cooperative game. This is The Crew, the quest for Planet 9, or else you do the Crew 2, which is the Mission Deep Sea, or I can't remember what they're called, but I always just call them Crew 1, Crew 2. I think Crew 2 is a little bit better, but either of the games works. They're very, very similar. It is basically a cooperative trick-taking game where you are trying to, without talking to your peers, what cards that you have in your hand, you're trying to make them win certain cards, win certain tricks that have certain cards in them. So you have missions in this game, like Larry might get the pink 5 and Jeanette might get the green 3. So you want Jeanette to win the trick that involves the green 3, and you are trying to manipulate your hand in a certain way, play your cards out in a certain way that she can win that trick that's got the green 3. And if you aren't familiar with trick-taking games, this can be a pretty tricky one. But once you get into it and learn the nuances of everything, this is a very, very good game. One of my favorite card games of all time. And it's one that if you've played trick-taking games with your like grandmas and grandpas and stuff like that, you can introduce this game to them and it will be familiar to them. But it's a cooperative game, so that throws a little twist on it. Also, you can't talk about the cards that are in your hand. Very, very good game. So my first game is The Crew. Next game we're going to talk about is an abstract game, and I love abstract games. I love the open information for everybody to see. I like how elegant and stylish they look. And I went through a couple different games that I thought about picking for this list. I thought about having chess in this. I thought about having Yinch, a very good game in this. I thought about Azul, but I ultimately came down to a game that gives me the feel of chess, but a little bit simpler and easier to get into. This is Onitama. In Onitama, you have your chess pieces, each player, and then you are trying to capture the opponent's master pawn, or else get your master into their dojo section. And how you're moving these pawns is by playing these cards. Each player's got 2 cards on their side, and you can see what the other player has, and you're going to use one of these cards, and that card dictates how you can move your certain pieces. But once you use that card for your movement, that card goes into the middle area, and then you grab whatever card was in that middle area. So you are constantly rotating these cards back and forth, and you see where your opponent can go, and you want to move in a certain place to kind of trap them and win the game. This gives you that chess-like feel without some of the drawbacks. Chess is a great game, but you know, it can be a little bit confusing for people to get into that have never played it. This is a much simpler version of it, and you can see exactly which pieces can move with what card. And also, chess is not fun unless you're playing someone of your same skill level. If I play someone who is much worse than me or much better than me, I'm not going to have a good time either destroying someone or getting destroyed. The best way to play chess is playing someone of equal skill in chess. This is a much easier game to get into, so the skill level is not going to be as far apart as it is in chess. So this is much better for an experienced player to play against a beginner player. It's going to be much closer than what chess would be. So the second one is Onitama. Going on to the third game, I really like worker placement games, so I wanted there to be a worker placement game in here. But the problem with worker placement games is, to me, they can feel a little samey after a few plays of worker placement games. I mean, you tend to do the same things a lot of times when you're playing a worker placement game over and over and over again. You know, you're going to go here, you collect the resources, go over here, spend those resources. So you get a little bit complacent, you know the motions that they're going into. So I wanted a game that kind of threw a little bit of a wrench into there. And the game that I'm going to choose, why I am choosing it is a lot of people's reason why they don't like this game. This is going to be Viticulture Essential Edition. And the reason, the thing that people don't like, a lot of people don't like, I should say, are these visitor cards. They're sort of event cards that will do big and wild things that will break the game. And they can be really, really powerful or really, really like minute or very subtle. And a lot of people don't like that. But to me, I really like that for the replay value for this game, because from game to game, you might get an event card that just blows you away. You're like, oh, geez, okay, this is really going to help me. And I think, to me, those wild, chaotic moments with those visitor cards causes this game to have a lot more replay value. It causes each game not to be so samey from game to game. It switches things up a little bit. So yeah, my third game on this list is Viticulture. Going on to the next one, I wanted a big, epic gaming experience game. If I'm going to have only 10 games, I want one of them to give me that big, epic 4X feel battling game. And this is a game, I thought I was going to put Scythe on this list, to be honest. I put Scythe on a lot of lists because I really like Scythe. But Scythe can get a bit samey from game to game, actually. I mean, I've played Scythe about 40 times now, and I know the motions that you go through in Scythe. This one, I think it has a little bit more variability in it. This is Dwellings of Eldervale, and in this game, you're going to be placing out workers, moving across the board, exploring new regions of the board, collecting resources, spending those resources in different aspects, and you're going to be building up sort of like this tableau area in front of you that is going to be an engine builder of sorts for yourself. And so because of that engine building aspect, it has a lot of replay value. It has a lot of variability from game to game. Also, there are 16 different factions in this game, so that's going to cause even more variability, even more replay value for this game. And so yeah, my big epic gaming experience game is Dwellings of Eldervale. Going on to the next one, I wanted a old classic Euro style feeling game for this list, and I debated between a few different games. I debated between Lorenzo Magnifico, I debated between Orleans. Ultimately, I settled down with the Castles of Burgundy. I don't talk about the Castles of Burgundy very often on this channel, but the Castles of Burgundy is a very, very good game. And in this game, you are basically rolling dice and using those dice as different types of actions. And you're basically grabbing tiles, putting them onto your own grid, and building out your area that way. But there's a lot of different buildings that you can build in this game, and all those buildings have different effects. And you sit there with the rule book in front of you, and you're going through like the 50 different types of buildings in this game. And so that all those different buildings make this game have a lot of replay. And it's just a very good classic Euro style feeling game. I do sort of wish they would reprint this, maybe retheme it, It looks, I don't really like the look of this game, and that's why I think this game doesn't get broken out as much as it should. But it's still a very, very good game, and a lot of people really like this game. It's a lot of people's favorite game of all time, in fact. It's a great Euro game. So the Castles of Burgundy. Going on to the next game. The next game is a game that has a lot of hate towards it for some reason. You know, it's a board game, so I don't understand why people just are so adamantly just against this game. This game is, of course, probably just from those words, you probably know, this is Wingspan. Wingspan is this tableau engine building sort of game from Stonemaier where you are basically collecting birds. And then the longer that you play this game, the more birds that you have on your player board. And whenever you do certain actions, the more birds that you have on that section, you're going to activate each of these birds that's in that section. And so throughout the game, your actions get better and better and better. And, you know, at the beginning of the game, you're like, okay, I'm going to go collect resources. By the end of the game, when you go collect resources, I'm going to collect resources, but then I'm going to activate this bird, and then I'm going to activate this bird, and I'm going to activate this bird. And there are a ton of different bird cards just in the base game. And since I'm not including the expansions in this list, I mean, I have 3 expansions that adds a ton more bird cards. But just in the base game alone, there are enough cards just in that. And so each time I play this game, my engine's a little bit different. I like that. I love just seeing how my engine builds throughout the game and then activating it each turn. It's very, very fun to me. Very easy to get into. I really like how the game starts out. You know, you only have these 4 different actions. It's very easy to explain those actions. But then throughout the game, it gets more and more complex as the more of the birds that you add to each section. So yes, my 6th game would be Wingspan. Going on to my 7th game, I really like roll and write games, but I didn't think there was a good chance that there wasn't going to be a roll and write on this list because I don't think roll and writes have necessarily the most replay value for them. But I did find one game that I really enjoy that I do think has a lot of replay value. And this is Welcome to the Moon, which is the 3rd iteration in this series of the Welcome to series of game. We had Welcome to, you know, your neighborhood. We had Welcome to New Las Vegas. Now we have Welcome to the Moon. Welcome to the Moon is sort of a campaign-style roll and write or flip and write game, which uses the same mechanisms of the original Welcome to, but in this one, it's a campaign, like I said, and it has 8 different maps. The maps offer a large variety of gameplay, but still similar enough from game to game to get into each one of them very, very easily. You just read like another extra couple paragraphs to see what that map's rules are, and then you can get into it. And you can play this as the campaign, like I said, or you can play it as one-shots. And I played through the campaign, I think, twice now, and then I've also just brought it out a bunch of times, just playing different maps along the way. So to me, I think this belongs on the list because it gives you 8 different flip and write games in it, and they're all very well done. So, number 7 was Welcome to the Moon. Going on to the 8th game. You could count this as a big epic game, I suppose, as well. This is a big, giant dungeon crawl game that I actually prefer to play on Steam, but I decided if I only have 10 games, I can't have any games on Steam as well. So if I can't have it on Steam, I'm going to have it in real life. This is Gloomhaven. This is a dungeon crawl cooperative game, and you are just going through the dungeon, trying to, you're spending cards to go move through this dungeon, attacking the different villains that are in this game, the little minions, trying to cooperate to accomplish that mission's goal. And this game has a ton in it. There are like 100 different missions that you can go and play through. It's a campaign, but the campaign, if you finish it, which I don't know anyone who has finished it, it's a lot of hours for it. So it's got a lot of replay value in it. I like the actual game itself. I like the RPG mentality of it, leveling up your character, retiring your character, bringing out a new one. Very, very interesting, and I played a ton on Steam. So if you like Gloomhaven and you haven't played it on Steam, check that one out because it is great on Steam. So number 8 was Gloomhaven. Going on to the next game. I love skirmish games, and I talk about a particular skirmish game a lot, Unmatched. I talk about Unmatched a lot on this channel because it is one of my all-time favorite games. But this is not going to be unmatched because, like I said, we're not doing expansions. So unmatched is great if you have all of the boxes, to me, and you have all 40 different characters. To me, I'm going in a different direction because I think the base game of this game offers a little bit more to it, and this is going to be Summoner Wars. Summoner Wars is a skirmish battling game. It's a card game where you are playing your cards out on this grid, and then you're going to be moving these cards along the way and trying to kill your opponent's summoner, which is like their big bad boss guy. And you are just rolling dice, attacking these people. All the cards, all your people that you're playing have different abilities. Each faction is very, very different from each other, and it feels very balanced. But the factions are just so wonderful. And you're like, wow, this is a great ability. But your opponent is like, wow, this is a great ability. So I think they've done a really good job of making each of the factions very interesting. And yeah, so Summoner Wars, it's just a great game. If you never played it, definitely check it out. Going on to the final game that I'm going to be talking about. I like cooperative games that are in like the middleweight to lightweight section of games. And at first, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, I'll probably pick Pandemic because Pandemic is almost as perfect a game to me as there can be. But I like a different game a little bit more. And, you know, I could have picked several games for this, whether it was like Pandemic or Horrified or Marvel United or Aeon's End or what is the Alien one? The Legendary Encounters, Alien or Predator version. I like both of those. But there's a ton of cooperative, like medium to lightweight games that I really like. But I decided to go with the Loop. The Loop combines a couple different things that I like. I like that there's like this aspect of if ever there's more than 3 of these red cubes in a section, then that section kind of gets blown away, and it's one of those things that you're going to lose from. It feels Pandemic in that section. But I like the how you're putting these red cubes on each of these boards. Some turns you have to put more cubes than others, red cubes, but you're dropping them down this tunnel sort of thing, and it's got 3 exit points in it, and you don't know where these cubes are going to go, and it causes a lot of tension and angst when you're dropping. There's like, please go in this section, please go in this section, don't go in this section. So you don't know where they're going to go, and I love that angst that it causes. It's also a bit of a deck building game because you're playing out these cards each turn and doing the actions on those cards, and you're building out a deck, playing these cards, going through your deck, adding a couple cards here and there. And I don't have a deck building game on this. This is a deck building game. You're not adding a ton of cards throughout the game, but you are adding cards and you are building up a deck. So it is a deck building game, cooperative, fun little game. Yeah, the Loop is absolutely wonderful. It's a great game. If you haven't played it, definitely check out the Loop. And that will conclude my 10 games. If I could only have 10 games in this board game collection, what 10 games would it be? I think those ones are going to be good. I might have missed a couple games here and there, but it was very hard to break down my collection and to just manage it into a 10-game collection. But I want to see everybody in the comments. You make your own. If you could only have 10 games, what 10 games would you have? I think that's very interesting to read what games other people would pick for this list. But either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. I hope you all have an amazing day. Take care.